Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. I am Michelle Chalfant, delighted to be here with you as always. We are on the 8th of December here, already the second week of December. I have a question for you. What do you do when you feel resistance in your life? Yeah. It's a great question, right? And today's guest, the one and only, Mr. Steven Pressfield, is here to break down resistance. What do you do when you feel that in your life? When you feel blocked, when you feel like you cannot move forward? We had a big conversation about resistance and many, many more things. You're going to love today's show. I just want to mention before we jump into the show, we've got 8 days left. The doors are closing on December 16th for the Adult Chair Coaching Certification Program. If you feel a call to this work, if you feel a call to help others heal and transform their lives, come sign up. You've got 8 more days, theadultchair.com/certification. And yeah, 8 days. If you want to jump on a call, I might be one of the ones that you end up talking to. So we'd love to chat with you, but we've got 8 days. We start this program January 13th in Charleston, South Carolina. For more information, again, theadultchair.com/certification. Okay, let's get back to Steven Pressfield. He is the author of so many fiction and nonfiction books, as well as, you probably know this book, The War of Art. This is one of my all-time favorite books. I highly recommend that you get this book and read it. It is all about resistance, but he's written so many others. The Gates of Fire, as well as The Legend of Bagger Vance, which of course was made into a movie, A Man at Arms, and so many others. He also is publishing his latest book, Government Cheese. It comes out January 1st. And if you would like a signed copy, you can pre-order that book at stephenpressfield.com. It is with great pleasure that I am able to introduce to you Mr. Steven Pressfield. Here we go. So welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Mr. Steven Pressfield. It's so nice to have you.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I was just sharing with you. I have a lot of gratitude for the work that you've written. Goodness, so many books. But the one that really changed my life, and I know so many people around the world talk about this book, but I was sharing with you that my coaching certification program, every year we give the War of Art to all of our coaches on the first day, because there's so much in that book that I think everybody on the planet needs to read.
Well, that's good. Glad that it's helping.
Yeah. So this is why I was delighted to have you on today. So tell us about, you have all these books that you're writing. You talk a lot about resistance. I know you have you have one new book coming out. So tell us about resistance, because this is something that I can't think of any human that does not encounter is resistance.
Well, it's my experience of it comes from being a writer.
Yeah.
And anytime you sit down in front of one of these things,
yes,
and you look at a blank screen, for me, a force radiates off that screen into your face, a negative force, trying to make you, well, first it'll tell you that you're worthless, you're no good. How do you dare, dream of accomplishing whatever you're accomplishing? And then it'll try to distract you and try to say, well, let's go to the beach, let's go hang out with our buddies, whatever. but its sole purpose is to stop you from doing your work. And
Right.
for me, I mean, it kicked my butt for years and years. And I never even knew it existed or even, and then at some point, I somehow just gave it a name in my own mind, resistance with a capital R, because it feels like it's resisting you.
Right.
And as soon as that was like a huge breakthrough for me as a writer, because
Mhm.
when I would hear those voices trying to distract me or those voices telling me I'm unworthy, I would say to myself, well, that's not me talking. Those aren't my thoughts, you
Oh.
know. That's resistance. And I'm
Mhm.
convinced that resistance is a force of nature, an objective force of nature like gravity. It's not personal. You're not crazy if it's happening to you. It's universal. Everybody, because believe me, I have thousands and thousands of emails from people telling me their resistance stories, and the voice they hear in their head is always the same. It's that
Mm.
same negative voice. So anyway, for me, it was a huge breakthrough just to give a name to this force and to acknowledge that it's there. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times we don't think it's there. We think, oh, I'll write, the great American novel or whatever. I'll just sit down and do it. And then we're amazed when we fail,
Yeah.
or we got on a program of physical fitness or a diet or whatever, and we fail. But once you know there is this negative force trying to stop you, it's a
Mhm.
lot easier to say, that's what that is. And then just keep going, keep doing the work.
So would you say that no matter what your passion is, that resistance is going to pop up?
Yes. In
Yeah.
fact, the more, this is one of my rules of thumb, as I know you know this, Michelle, the more important a project or a goal or whatever it is to the
Mhm.
evolution of your soul, the
Yeah.
more resistance you will feel to it. If it's just
Ooh.
some little dinky thing you want to do, I want whatever, you won't feel very little resistance. But
Yeah.
if you have a big thing like I have a drinking problem and I'm going to stop, you're going to
Hmm.
have massive resistance. Or a book or a business or something that you want to do. So
Mm.
for me, I see that as good news
Hmm.
because it tells you that's what you have to do. When you feel massive resistance to something, that's the thing you got to do. Um, so it's hard to convince yourself of that in the moment because you're
Yeah.
just being blown away by these headwinds. But like I started on a new book, a few months ago, and I
Hmm.
was really having a hard time, self-doubt, all that sort of stuff. And I told myself, this is a good sign. It was hard for me to believe it, even though I've
Yeah.
done this a million times. But I said, this is a good sign that resistance is so high. It shows you that you really need to do this project. And it was true. I finally sort of got through that first, skirmish line, and knock wood, everything is settled down.
I love what you just said. So the more resistance you have, I'm going to use, and let me put it through my frame. It's like the more resistance you have, the more in line with your soul's mission that you are. Would you say that?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
I was reading something the other day. Somebody was a sort of a coach type of person. They were talking about decisions that you might make to change your life, and how one of the ways you might do it is you write a pro and con list,
Yeah.
and he said, oh, that never works. He says, the thing is that whatever this new decision is, you have to really want it at the 99% level. And I
Hmm.
thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but that's not true because what he's leaving out is resistance. You know, when you're
Mm.
facing a new project, it's not like your emotion is, oh, I love this project. I want
Mhm.
to do it. And you said your emotion is, I'm terrified of this project. So who am I to do it? I'm going to fail. I'm going to, if I like say
Mhm.
leave a job and start
Yes.
my own business, like I'm sure you did originally, Michelle,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
for
You think,
sure. Yep.
I'm going into the toilet. I'm going to lose my house. That's what you're thinking. What you're really, it's not feeling, oh, I really love this. I really want to do it. It's, I'm
Yes.
terrified of this thing
Yep.
and I don't know how to attack it.
That's so true. So true. Wow. I think
Another way
about
I
you.
look at this, if I can, I'll interrupt you a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, go, go.
If I think of resistance like if you think of a tree in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of a sunny meadow,
Mm-hmm.
tree is your dream, the
Mm-hmm.
book you want to write, the thing you want to start. As soon as that tree appears, a shadow falls, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
out in the sun. The
Mm-hmm.
shadow is resistance, and the
Mm.
shadow is directly proportional to the tree. The bigger the dream, the bigger the resistance. So, what happens with
Ooh.
some of us is we see the shadow. We only see the shadow. We feel the resistance. We feel, oh, I can't do this. I'll never be able to do this. I'm a loser. I'm a bum. I can't do it. Right. But
Yeah.
we should remember that the bigger that shadow is, the bigger the dream. So, and it's infallible. It's always true. So when we're experiencing that shadow,
Mm-hmm.
the force of nature again. The tree didn't make it happen. It just happens. A shadow
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's
Ooh,
what
that's so good. What's surprising to me is that you've written how many books?
22, I think.
Oh my God. Okay, so 22 books.
And the
And you're
first one,
telling
I was 53 years old.
really?
Yeah.
Wow. And you're oh yeah, and I want you to tell your story about that. Okay, but wait. But you're
It
telling
hurts.
me that after 23 books that you still have resistance, even like you just said it, you had resistance recently, writing the one right now after all these books.
Yeah, it never goes away.
Isn't that fascinating?
There's that little chapter in The War of Art about how Henry Fonda, as an actor, even when he was 75 years old doing a stage play, would throw up in his
Yep.
dressing room before
Yeah.
every performance, right?
Yeah.
So what that told me was that resistance never goes away. Stage fright, fear, self-doubt
Yeah.
never goes away. I mean,
Yeah.
Henry Fonda, who's better than him?
Yeah.
So,
Right. Right.
um, and certainly I experience it. In fact, I think in some ways it even gets worse as you
Yeah.
get older because resistance is an intelligent force and it's very subtle and diabolical, and it will come up with with ways of attacking you that you never
Mm,
thought of before, really subtle ways of attacking you.
yeah.
So you got to be, it's always trying to fake you out.
So what is the resistance? What is it? Where does it come from?
I mean, I'll give you my long explanation. It's a
Please.
theory.
Yes, please.
Um, Oddly enough, I was just on Joe Rogan's podcast
Yeah.
like a few days ago, and he asked
Yeah.
me this, and I gave
Yeah.
him. So I'll be repeating myself, but
That's okay.
I believe this is a long explanation, so you got to bear with me a little bit.
I'm ready. I love it.
If we think of the human psyche, construction of the psyche, and I know that's a big part of what you talk about.
Mhm.
There's a big part of it, a big circle that I'd call the self with a capital S, the Jungian self. And
Yep.
in the middle of that is this little tiny dot called the ego.
Mhm.
And the self, the big self, contains um, intuition, inspiration, the
Mhm.
collective unconscious, the individual unconscious. That's where great ideas come from.
Mhm.
The ego is this little tiny part of it that does things we need to do in the material world. Like the
Mhm.
ego helps us drive a car, helps us pay a mortgage, that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
So I think what happens when we're trying to connect with our deeper, authentic selves, our
Mhm.
artistic selves, our creative selves, we're trying to connect with that big self, capital S self.
Yep.
And when we do, like when we enter kind of a flow state of something, or if we
Mhm.
just sit down and are doing our work, writing or whatever it is, that's a threat to the ego. Because the
Mhm.
ego knows if we can situate our center of our being in the big self, the ego is out of a job.
Yep.
So the ego, this is my theory, will invents this thing called resistance to try to stop us from going to that bigger self. And that's why it'll try to distract us or try to tell us we're unworthy one way or another. And
Mm.
so that's my theory. I have no idea if it's true, but it rings a bell with me.
Well, it's totally in line with my theory, so let's say it's true.
Okay, let's do it.
I have the same exact theory. That's exactly how I would define the ego, the self, all of it. And I just was speaking to my coaches this morning, actually. I had a big group call with my coaches, and I talked about the flow state. Like when we're in the flow state and we're writing or we're creating or we're working with a client or wherever we are, whatever we're doing, God, you are connected to your soul, to God. It's coming, that energy is coming right down through you. And the ego is what's going to pull you away and distract you. It's going to distract you. It's going to tell you you're not good enough. You're not lovable. Who do you think you are? Writing a book, being on a podcast, whatever, being a coach, whatever it is that you're doing, who do you think you are? You're a fraud. You can't put yourself out there. So
we're in
yeah,
exact alignment, Michelle.
exact alignment. So then when you're in that resistant state, and this is what I was sharing with my coaches, I'd love your opinion on this since you're the resistant expert here. And well, you kind of already said it. You can't not have the resistance. You still do it anyway. And if you remember the book, I remember reading it in my 20s, like Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's like, one of my coaches asked me a question this morning, like, I said, I don't think you can move forward without resistance. Like, it's like, is your passion greater than the resistance? Then, go in that direction versus listening only to the resistance and stopping what you're doing. You can't get rid of it, correct? What's your opinion?
I mean, it never goes away. And I think that thing, feel the fear and do it anyway,
Yeah.
is exactly right. I mean, a lot of times we will think, well, let me wait until the fear goes away and then I'll do it.
Yeah.
But the reality is the fear never goes away.
Yeah.
I have a friend at the gym who's friends with Laird Hamilton, the big wave
surfer. Yeah.
And he says that Laird Hamilton apparently has an entire philosophy about fear, because obviously it must be terrifying to catch one of these 100-foot waves. I mean, you can die at any moment, right?
Yeah.
But so Laird Hamilton knows there's never going to be a moment where there's no fear. You just got to catch the wave anyway.
So true. So true. I was out actually in Malibu. I did a podcast. I was on Gabby's show, on Gabby Reese's show. Yeah. Wow. That's, I love that. It's so true. Good God. He knows fear on those waves. I mean, come on. Wow. So resistance comes
when you feel that fear, it's a good sign. Again, it's resistance.
You actually know you're making the right decision or you're going in the right direction if you have the resistance then, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So when there's resistance, so there's no real way to overcome it, but you just keep going. But then for you, as a writer, as an author, and you're writing, doesn't it quiet down though?
It does quiet down. It's sort of, to me, the analogy is like diving into a cold swimming pool.
Yes.
As we're walking around the edge, trying to psych ourselves up, we're terrified, right?
Yeah.
But once you hit the water and you swim for a few strokes, you go, oh, okay, it's not so bad. Now I'll just keep swimming. So I do think that once you sort of take action, that's the big thing. Not think about, don't talk about, act. Once you take action, resistance will recede. I say in the War of Art that resistance has no strength of its own. The only strength that comes from is our fear of it.
Yeah.
So once we act in the face of that fear, it's like resistance kind of goes away. We just sort of dismiss it. Not that it won't be back again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But at least for this moment, it goes away.
Oh, that's so good. So when you think about resistance, does it come in many different forms? Like, do you think of resistance as an inner critic, inner fraud, or is it just telling you stop? Is it just resistance? Like, what does that mean to you?
It's definitely the inner critic. That's almost the definition of resistance, the imposter syndrome.
All of that.
And resistance takes the form of a voice in your head.
Yeah.
And the mistake we make, which I made for years, is we think it's our voice.
Yeah.
We think that it's us thinking, you're no good, you can't really do this. Who are you to do that? We think, oh, it's our voice, it's true, But in fact, as I've said from all the letters I've gotten, everybody has that exact same voice.
Yeah.
So it's the ego trying to stop us. And resistance is so subtle and diabolical that even though it's kind of impersonal, it will know your weakness.
Yeah.
And it'll go like a laser guided missile right to that weakness,
Yeah.
If you didn't have enough education, or you feel that you you're a child of the streets or whatever, it'll tell you, who are you to, start a company or write a book or do anything, there's millions of people from Harvard, blah, 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 blah. And vice versa. If you went to Harvard, it'll tell you you're an educated, elite, idiot, you don't have any street sense. You'll never figure this out. So it'll always go for the, your weakness, and it knows
Yeah.
it.
It's like you can't win. It's going to come up no matter
You
what.
certainly cannot argue with resistance. The only way is to dismiss it and just say, be gone, get thee behind me, Satan, that thing.
Yes, I do. I've done parts work with myself and with clients for 25 years. That's really helpful because I will take that voice, whatever it is, whether it be procrastination or resistance or, you're not good enough. And I actually will put it outside of myself and I'll talk to it. Okay, what do you want me to know? Tell me everything. And I let it just have that voice. And then I go, okay, you done? Okay, now I'm going to go do my thing because it
Tell me
wants
a
to
little
be.
bit more about that, Michelle. How do you
Well,
actually do this in the moment?
yeah, I love chair work. So I just take it and I'll put that voice, I give it a form, and not everybody is visual, but I happen to be a visual person and auditory. So I can take that voice and I'll say, what do you want? It wants us to know something, or else it wouldn't be wanting to get our attention and resisting something. So I turn toward it. Thich Nhat Hanh talked a lot about this. You turn toward that which scares you. You turn toward the things like resistance. So I turn toward it and I'll say, what do you want me to know? So I imagine resistance sitting in a chair in front of me, and I'll say, tell me everything. And I just close my eyes and I let it speak. And it'll say, you're not good enough. You're a fraud. Who do you think you are? You're too old. You're too this. Your hair's too, whatever it might be. And I'll go, thank you. I just sit from my adult big self, right? And say, thank you for sharing. Because it wants to be heard. It wants to be known. And what I have found is when you sit and give it space and time to actually hear it out, it starts to shrink down. It goes, oh, okay, you heard me. I'm like, yeah, I heard you. Is there anything else? No. Okay, great. I'm going to still do the thing. I'm going to write the book or do whatever. But thank you for sharing, because it's the ego comes in, it's based in fear. So it's trying to protect us on some level from, making ourselves too big or embarrassing ourselves in some way. It doesn't know what we know, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's great, Michelle. I'd heard people allude to that, but I never had anybody actually explain it to me. It's like Fritz Perls.
Yes.
Do
Yes.
that, right?
Yes.
Your mother in the chair, and then you talk to your whatever. Yeah.
Gestalt therapy. You're
a
using
form
chair work.
of dismissing resistance, right? Oh, thank you for telling me all that.
Yeah.
And I'll see you around. Yeah.
It's like someone that wants your attention. It's like, hey, Steve, I got to tell you something. I'm so worried. I got to tell you something. Then you turn, you go, what do you want me to know? Well, you might fail. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? No. Okay, thank you. Tell us the story about turning your book in for publishing and the rejection. How many times were you rejected?
Oh, I don't, I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I don't have like a wall full of rejection slips, but it did take me like 27 years or 28 years from the time I first quit a job, an advertising job in New York, to try to write a book. Until I actually got a book published, The Legend of Bagger Vance, back in 1995.
So what was that journey like for you to do that? Like,
well, actually, I've just finished writing a book. I'm going to put a plug in for it.
Please do.
It's coming out in like about a month. It's a memoir. It's called Government Cheese. And it's about those years, like when people say, what were you doing? What the hell were you doing?
Yeah.
And I was just working a lot of jobs around the country, driving a cab, driving trucks, working in oil fields, stuff like that. And also I did have like a 10-year career as a screenwriter. So I was just sort of on that path that I could never quite break through and get rid of the ego and write from my real center. It took a long time before I could finally do that.
Ooh, so you said I couldn't get rid of the ego.
Yeah.
Do you think we can?
Yes, I do think we can.
Tell me more.
When I say the ego, like in the world of being a writer, it's like being self-conscious, and you write a sentence and you immediately think, is anybody going to like this sentence? Is this like a good sentence or a bad, and that's the ego, right?
Mhm.
But if you can get away from that and almost just sort of let it rip, just write, page after page, and you don't
Mhm.
even look at it, don't even censor it, no self-censoring,
Yeah.
then you can, after a while, get to a state. Again, it's about fear, right? The reason the ego is there and self-critiquing is because
Mhm.
you're afraid of rejection or whatever. But
Mhm.
once you sort of let that go, and it took me realistically like 30 years of trying,
Mhm.
um, then you can actually start to write in a voice, and your
Mhm.
own voice or the voice of a character that's in a story, you can do it. Are you? I'm sure you're familiar with the book Zen and the Art of Archery. Have you ever heard of that one?
No.
Oh, this is a great one. All of your coaches should read this.
Who wrote? Yeah, who wrote that?
It's a German guy, Eugene,
Uh-huh.
but Eugene without the final E.
Okay.
Herrigel, Herrigel.
Okay.
And he was I think he wrote this like in the 50s.
Okay.
And he was a German philosopher. And he went to Japan. He actually was in Japan. And he took up the study of archery under a Zen teacher.
Mhm.
And this is again about the ego. And
Mhm.
what he found was the moment of where you release the string and you release the arrow, the
Mhm.
teacher would say, you must let the arrow release itself. Don't do
Mhm.
it with your mind. And the student, Mr. Harrigal, he would
Mhm.
either let it go too soon or would
Mhm.
hang on too late. It was
Mhm.
all, and I guess this really is a sort of a Zen discipline, whether it's
Mhm.
meditation or something like that, to give you this sort of impossible problem that the
Mhm.
answer is give up.
Wow.
Stop trying.
Yeah.
Stop trying to control the arrow and and so it's a very short book, and I highly recommend it.
What's it called?
It
Zen
really
and what?
talks
What was
about
the second
issues
part
that
of
we
it?
do.
I'm gonna put it in the show notes. Zen and what?
Zen and the art of archery. Zen in the art of archery.
Art of archery. I'll definitely get it. And we'll add this all to the show notes too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
So talk about amateur versus pro attitude.
Ah, okay. So if we're facing resistance and being defeated by it over and over,
Yep.
what do we do? And for me, what worked for me, one of the things that worked for me was I decided that the reason I was being defeated
Mhm.
was that I was working like an amateur.
Okay.
And that what I needed to do was think of myself as a pro. And for instance, when an amateur encounters adversity,
Hmm.
an amateur folds,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
This is too hard. I'm going to the beach.
Yeah.
But a professional, when encountering adversity, and I would think about Michael Jordan or
Hmm.
Kobe Bryant or Tom Brady, somebody like that.
Hmm.
And I would say, would Michael Jordan quit? You know,
Hmm.
and if he had some, never. So
Hmm.
a pro has a very, I don't want to say hard boiled attitude, but a professional attitude. It's like, we're here to do a job. We're
Hmm.
not going to tolerate any of this frou-frou stuff. We're going to sit down, we're going to do our work. And a pro shows up every day. A pro stays
Hmm.
on the job every day. And a pro plays hurt. That's a big thing. You know,
Oh, that's
athletes
good.
know
Yeah.
there's never a moment when your body is 100% right, right? There's always something with your knee. There's always something, your ankle,
Hmm.
something's wrong.
Hmm.
And an amateur will fold and say, oh, I'm hurt. I can't do it today. Pro goes out and play. And if you think about some of the great moments in Michael Jordan's career, it was when he had the flu and he had food poisoning. He still went
Yeah.
out and, played great. So I just sort of told myself, let me flip the switch in my head and tell
Hmm.
myself I'm not going to fold like an amateur. I'm going to
Hmm.
think of myself as a professional. And that really helped. Like if you're going to write a book, let's say,
Hmm.
and you think of yourself as a professional, do you say, well, I'm going to work, 3 days a week? No,
Hmm.
you're going to work 7 days a week,
Yeah.
maybe six, and you're going to work at the same time in the
Hmm.
same place, and nothing's going to stop you,
Hmm.
um, if you have kids and you're going to close the door, you're going to say, kids, understand, daddy goes in at a room, you stay out,
Right.
and you stand by that, and that's a professional attitude. And I found that when I adopted that for myself, it just made a lot of sense. Nothing to it. Same thing, like if we go back to our diving into a cold swimming pool.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to be scared. An amateur would go back in the warm house. Professional dives right straight into the pool, doesn't even think about it.
So
And
true.
I'm also going to try to develop a practice. I'm going to
Mhm.
make Tuesday feed into Wednesday, feed into Thursday, so that 9 months into this project, I'm in a total groove, where I just do it
Mm.
like a machine every day. I show up and I
Mm.
do my work.
That's really good. Question for you. How do you,
Let me throw in another plug. I have another book besides The
yeah,
War of Art
yeah,
called Turning Pro.
I read, that's another great one.
So
Yep.
that's what, if anybody wants to know about that, that's where that is.
Another great one. Um, what, I have a question. What do you do when you are overtaken with resistance and you can't find that flow state and you don't know how to move forward and you're like, I just don't even know what direction to go in? How do you get into your flow state?
I think a lot of it, if we go back to the idea of being a professional, is
Mhm.
just showing up every day and doing work. And
Mhm.
the flow state is really rare. Even
Mhm.
Michael Jordan didn't get into it very
Mhm.
often.
Mhm.
But what we can do is we can just keep working.
Mhm.
And like if if I'm if I'm starting a book and I'm kind of stuck on something, maybe I have
Mhm.
one opening scene and I don't know, I will just sort of go back to the absolute basics. I'll sit down and almost free associate in a file, and I'll
Yeah.
just say, start out, what is this book about? And I'm just talking to myself.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do I want to accomplish here?
Mhm.
And I find that if you start doing that, taking that action,
Mhm.
ideas will come to you.
Yeah.
The muse will respond. You might not get into a great flow state, but at the end of the day, you'll have advanced the ball a little bit.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think work is the answer to almost everything.
Yeah. And I love that. Every year, we just moved it to January now, but we do a whole month-long journaling challenge. So I
Ah,
send in journaling prompts. Excuse me, I email journaling prompts to everybody. And what I find when we journal or write, we do have an easier time getting into that flow state. So no matter if you're an author or whatever you're doing, if you just need ideas, pen to paper or even typing, when you start to write, it's like that the egoic part of us just sort of steps aside and you tap into something bigger than us and it starts to come through in the words.
I think that's exactly true.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that. So what if you're rejected? Like what happens when you are met with rejection?
I mean, that is a really tough one for everybody, right? Because it plugs into
Yeah.
all the things we remember. But
Yeah.
there's a story, I'll give you a little true story. There was a Broadway producer named Jed Harris back in the 20s and the 30s. He had a ton of hits, but he had a bunch of flops as well.
Mhm.
And at one point, a young reporter was interviewing him, and he said to him, Mr. Harris, how do you explain the flops? And Harris started laughing, and he said, that's not the question. The question is, how do you explain the hits? And what he meant
Wow.
by that is that we fail a lot
Yeah.
more than we succeed. And
Mm.
probably from Jed Harris's point of view, the flops were as good as the hits. It was like, why didn't they find an audience? I don't know,
Yeah.
but rejection is a tough one. We always have to come back to ask to be our own, I don't want to say critic, our own judge of our own stuff. And,
Mhm.
and all we can ask of ourselves is, did I do the best I could with what I've got right now? 5 years
Mhm.
from now, I may be able to do a lot better.
Yeah.
But with what
Yeah.
I've got right now, did I do the best I could? Was I true to the material? And if we were, even if we fail, okay, move on
Mm.
to the
Mhm.
next one. There's
Mhm.
another story. actually, a lot of these stories come from one particular person in my life. This was about Cole Porter,
Mhm,
the great songwriter,
mhm,
when he used to work for Hollywood.
mhm,
And and he got a song rejected that he had written for a movie, it was rejected. And a
mhm,
friend of him said, "Wow, how do you deal with that, Cole?" And he said, "I got a million of them. There's another trolley coming down the track,
mm.
and every minute. And that's true. We may think, and again, this is the voice of resistance. Oh, I've only got one idea. If
Yeah,
this idea fails, it's all over. But it's not true. We've got idea after idea after idea. They're all because it's coming from the self, coming from the big self,
yes,
and that big self is inexhaustible. So it's hard to do. It's hard to say, okay, I've been rejected,
yeah.
but it's just, like Cole Porter, I got a million of them. What's the next one?
Just keep going. So do you think that everybody has a sort of passion or purpose inside of them, but some people just don't know what it is yet because maybe the resistance is blocking it?
I absolutely do. And I think that um, sometimes that passion or that calling is really unconventional. It's not something
Mm,
like being a nuclear physicist or a brain surgeon or whatever it is.
mhm,
Like I have a friend, my friend Ruthie,
mhm,
and she has never had a job in her life.
mhm,
She's sort of always depended on husbands and things like that.
mhm, mhm.
And if you wanted to be down on her, you could say, well, she's never worked, but her calling, she's one of these people that in her immediate family and in her extended family and even beyond that, she's the one that people will go to when they're in trouble. And
Mm,
there's no
mhm.
definition for that. It's not a
Yeah,
conventional thing, but
yeah.
that's her calling.
Mm,
And um, so I think we all have callings. Some of them, particularly for women, are callings that are defined by love and by the
mhm,
giving of love
mhm,
rather than going out and fighting battles and stuff like that.
mhm,
Um, and a lot of times, I think we don't give credit to ourselves for what we're doing, what our calling is, because it's not
mm,
conventional. But yeah, I do believe everybody's got one. And in fact, the story of all of our lives, I think, is the same story. It's like
mm.
we don't know who we are. How do we
Right,
find who we are? And then we finally
right.
do find it, and then we can go forward from there.
How do we find it? It's so true because there are definitely people that say, I just don't know what I'm here to do. I have no idea what I'm here to do. And it's like, just try something. And the other thing I suggest is ask your friends and family. Ask the people that look at you, kind of like Ruthie.
Yeah,
It might not be a career, it might not be a job, but it might be you're the caretaker or you're somebody that nurtures others or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
I love that. Rejection is definitely a hard one.
yeah.
It's a hard one. It's hard
That's
to
true. It is hard.
it's hard to pull ourselves back up when we have rejection or failure, you know.
The other sort of professional way of thinking about this
Mhm.
is to sort of train yourself not to look at Instagram for how many likes you've
Oh
got,
God.
or
Yeah.
if there's any place where there are reviews, don't look at the reviews.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and just ask yourself, did I do what I'm supposed to do? But
Mhm.
it's hard to do. But that's what you're talking about, the adult chair. That's
Yeah.
the adult chair. Being
Yep.
able to say, I don't care what everybody else says. I'm
Yeah.
happy with what I did. Uh, and here, I'll pull another thing that I say all the time to people, but I think this fits right in,
Yeah.
is people sometimes ask me, well, what do you do between books? And
Mhm.
I say, there never should be a time between books.
Mm.
When you're 2/3 of the way through one, and I don't just mean books, I mean any project, right? 2/3 of the way through one, start thinking about the next one. So that by the time you get to the end of this one you're working on, you've already got 30 or 40 pages, however rough, of the next one.
I love that.
Because because again, if that first one gets rejected and you have nothing else, you're lost.
Mhm.
You're in a
Yeah.
hole you got to dig out of. But
Yeah.
if you've got another one and you're excited about it, a song, an album, an idea, a project of whatever, you go, okay, first one didn't work, but I'm deep into the second
That's awesome. I love that. I'm letting that land. That's really,
one.
really good. That's really good. I think about that the ego sometimes just tries to almost like extinguish our purpose, let's say, or passion, right? Um, I when before, I was a therapist for 20 some years, and then I started this podcast because one of the people I was working with said, you need a podcast. This is in November 2014, I started it. And then everything just kept growing, not because we were doing anything that unusual. It just people seemed to like the content. And in 2018, I said, I really need help marketing this thing. I don't know, like, I just need help. I can't do it on my own with just one person. So I hired a marketing company. They were awful. And I had a contract, so I could not get out of it. I mean, when I tell you I'd saved all this money and I gave them all my money, and I was down to zero money at the end. And literally, I almost walked away from all of it because it was so awful. I could go on and on. And that part doesn't matter.
I can relate completely.
Oh my God, Steve. I mean, I was ready to throw. I said to myself, okay, God, do you want me to keep going? Because I'm so my soul feels crushed. And my soul feels crushed. Talk about resistance. I was like, I don't think I should keep going anymore. I just think I'm done. And I literally had to sit there, and I was like, I always liked real estate. Maybe I'll go into real estate. I was like, maybe I'll change jobs. But I have such a deep passion for helping people heal and transform their lives. Like, that is my calling on this planet. But I almost walked away, and I really sat with it for a few weeks, not months. It was a few weeks, and it was I ended up going out with this guy who was an entrepreneur and like a mentor kind of person. And I looked at him across the table. I said, do you know how much money I just lost in this marketing company that just about destroyed my company? I mean, they put out horrible emails, video. It was just one thing after the next. I couldn't get out of the contract without suing. It was just a mess. And he looked across the table at me. He's like, yeah, I go, I lost almost $100,000. I go, I don't have any money left. I don't know how to move forward. He goes, you're an entrepreneur, right? And I said, I guess I am now. And he said, so what? I was like, do you know how much money I lost? He goes, don't get lost in that story, Michelle. What are you here to do? I said, change people's lives. I want to help people heal and transform. And he goes, keep going. I'm like, I have no money left. He goes, keep going. I was like,
God
he
bless
made
him.
it sound like I lost $5 in the parking lot walking into breakfast with him, right? And he goes, this is normal. You are going to have resistance. You're going to fail, and you're going to fail again. And you keep going. You get yourself back up and you keep going. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. And I drove home and I was like, is he kidding me? And I realized he was right. He was right.
That's a great story. So true.
Yeah.
For all of us, Yeah.
So did you say you had a similar story to that?
I might both have a bunch of more of those moments in the future. We
It's
better be
hard.
ready for it. Yeah.
It's hard. And if we let the ego win, then we don't fulfill our mission here, and our purpose. And I sat there, I was like, I just know this is what I'm made to do. I'm here to do this. And I really love helping other people. I just love that. So there I went again, and I started up again, like just a few weeks later, but it was hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard. So,
but the new Michelle, the post crack up Michelle is a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Michelle, and a lot more mature and a lot more grounded. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I learned
able to help your clients.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I have this coaching program now, and I can help my coaches so much better because I realize like failure is part of it. Falling on your face, sometimes that's part of it. Being overwhelmed, that's life. And that's building, when we build something big and we're here to help others, resistance is going to pop up, and rejection and failure. It's going to happen. You keep going anyway.
I couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah. You keep saying yes, even when you want to say no. I am walking away. this is not for me. This scares me. I don't want to do it. I don't want to get out of bed and do this. It's like, nope. Like you said, you have to adopt that pro attitude. And I say, no. I let my purpose drive me more than anything, and my mission. And that's what keeps me going. And it's hard. It's hard some days.
Well, on that note.
Yeah. Was there
Yeah.
anything else that you can, any more words of wisdom? You shared so much today. Is there anything else you want to share?
Just that, like just what you said, that you get knocked down. That's part of the deal,
Yep.
you know, and failure is part of it. You know, actually, I have to run. I've got a couple of guys here. We're fixing a window for me.
Yeah.
Which, so I'll
Yeah.
say
So
thanks a lot, Michelle. I hope that, you know, we'll do
of
this again
course,
sometime.
of course. Tell us though, before you jump off, where can people find you?
I have a website with just my name, StephenPressfield.com.
Okay. We will
I'm on
put
any
it right
place you
in
wanna
the
buy
show
books.
notes.
And
Perfect.
I'm on Instagram. I have a bunch of like little series that I do, little video series
Yep.
that you can find me there. And my new book coming out is called Government Cheese, coming in about
Perfect.
a month.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Keep up the great work. We'll do this again.
Definitely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye for now.